Good afternoon, everyone. I can see most of you, if not all of you, have now moved from the lobby into our session today. Delighted to welcome you to one of our MGAA Professional Optics session. Before I hand over to Jake from our MGAA Next Gen committee to deliver today's session, I'm just going to run through a couple of housekeeping points and introduce myself. I'm Manveen. I'm the Learning and Insights Manager here at the MGAA. You'll notice at the moment that you won't be able to turn your camera and microphone on. They're not currently enabled, just to maximise the bandwidth and reduce disruption for the session. If we use maximise bandwidth for Jake today, we will enable these as needed during the Q&A so that you can get the most out of the session. So please don't panic if you can't turn them on, but hopefully audio is coming through loud and clear and you can hear us still. We do ask that no AI note-taking tools are used or started, as we don't have permission of everyone attending for these to be used. And a great topic that will probably come up in today's session as well about AI and permissions. We do encourage and welcome questions. You can use the chat function for this. You'll notice along the top you've got the chat option. We've also got the Q&A section enabled for you today, and there's an opportunity, if you want to ask a question anonymously, for you to use the Q&A bit, and you'll be able to find that next to the chat option. So please use whichever one you feel is most appropriate. On the odd occasion that we do run out of time addressing any questions, we will take these offline and Jake can respond to you directly. We are recording today's session, and a link to the recording will be issued post-event together with our feedback survey. I'll also drop the feedback survey into the chat at the end of the session. Please do give your feedback or advice to us, as we've had that come up in a previous session. It just means we can continue delivering fantastic content to you. And then finally, as always, if you find that this session supports and aligns with your learning and development, please do add this to your CPD log. Great CPD for you here. That's all from me. I'm going to introduce today's session and hand over to Jake, who's going to talk to you about cybersecurity and hygiene. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you, Manveen, and hello, everyone. So my name's Jake. I'm head of security at a managed security service provider in London called Intersys. And on the Next Gen committee, I am the cyber and digital insights lead. And today we're going to be talking about your personal digital risk and professional responsibility. And we'll be running through practical habits that protect yourself and your colleagues and in turn your clients. So hopefully you can all hear me loud and clear. We're going to start with the hook, which is 30 seconds of audio is all they needed to become your director. So this is a hypothetical scenario that I'm about to give you, but it's based on a real issue. So picture this. Someone in finance, we'll call her Sarah, gets a voice note from a director. The tone of it's unmistakable. He's traveling. It's a bad line. Needs a supplier payment pushed through quietly before the end of the day. Everything checks out on Sarah's side. It sounds like the person, but actually it wasn't. And his voice was effectively cloned from a 30-second birthday video that he'd posted to a public Instagram. So this has nothing really to do with work, but there is a bridge to this in that attack, basically from that 30-second birthday video that had, an impact on the business. So your cyber posture outside of work is no longer separate from your working life. And what I mean by that is, let's say that you sign up for a website, a shop that you frequently buy from, and you use a password, which you just so happen to also use to you also set on your work login. Let's say the shop gets breached. Well, in that case, the criminal then has the keys to your work account. Right, so hold that thought because we'll fix on that a bit later. But this session today is aimed at those starting out, and also I'm aware there might be some more senior members of staff here as well. But for those that are just starting out in their career, building a network, it means open profiles, and you're working on building your reputation. So that's the least affordable to dent at this point. So what we're going to cover in today's session: phishing and modern scams, social media footprint, device hygiene, passwords and account security, the dangers of oversharing, something called shadow AI, and that will become clearer later on, and recognizing AI scams. So today's threat landscape, scams, they used to be very clumsy, right? So you would receive an email through that would be littered with spelling mistakes, especially if it originated from someone who's maybe their first, their mother's tongue isn't English, right? You could tell that you could tell a scam email from a mile off. That now, thanks to AI or thanks not to AI, is becoming, these emails are becoming harder to spot because AI is being used to not only amplify the rate of these attacks, but also to articulate information in a much more sophisticated way than before. So, the old advice was to spot the telltale signs. The left email is the scam that we're all trained on, and the right email is sort of outlining how AI has turned things around a bit. So the old advice is dead. AI writes fluently and it polishes messages instantly at scale. So if you can't catch it by reading it, the defense is basically behavioral, and we'll go over some of those, some tips later on how to spot these. So scams that target you as an individual. If you drive a car and you frequently use car parks, you're at the payment meter, you might see a QR code, right? And that will allow you to make the payment. Now, what threat actors have seen to be doing in recent days is actually sticking on QR codes on top of the original. Now, when you scan those QR codes, the tampered QR code, you'll be led to a site that either asks for your payment information or information about yourself that will then be used to target you at a later stage. Social engineering is another scam that targets you. So in the example, which I hope you could sort of see from your side, it might be a bit blurry, but the classic LinkedIn message from a contact of yours that has been compromised. They may have used a weak password on their LinkedIn account. Their account has been compromised as a result and used to try and spread the infection to others. So it might be in the example that I have on screen. I've got someone called Maya, who is a compromised contact of mine, who has basically introduced themselves by saying, "Hi Jake, is this you in this photo?" I'm thinking to myself, "Hang on a minute, what photo? I want to see what this is all about." So, the wrong thing that I could do is click that link and engage with it, enter my password details, etc. Another sort of attack that we see quite often is something called SMS smishing, and these come in many forms. So in the example that I have on screen, this is a text that I received from, well, supposedly my bank. It's obviously not, about a payment that I tried to make to Marriott Resorts for £728. If this was what please click here to log in and reject the payment. Right. Now, if I've not got my guard up, I might actually click that and supply some information to it. So these scams, something they all have in common is that they're mass produced a lot of the time, right? So I'm going to hit you with something that is quite scary. Voice cloning. So we talked about the scams we've already heard about, and this is something that we're seeing more of, thanks thanks not to AI. I'm going to show you an example here. This is my voice that I've cloned from 30 seconds of public audio. So what I did was I took one of the webinars that I had done before. I took a 30-second sample of it and I ran it through a tool to clone my voice effectively from that output. And I'm going to demonstrate to you what that sounds like.
Music is the colourful garden where the soul's birds flourish. Museums are windows into the colourful stories of our past.
So that's quite scary, right? That's just from 30 seconds of audio. Can you imagine what 2 minutes of audio would produce? Now, how do threat actors then weaponize a clone voice? Well, that's where my next example is going to come into play. So picture this: the threat actor has cloned my voice. They're aware of who I work with, and they reach out to one of my colleagues via WhatsApp, and they send a voice note. This is the voice note.
Hi Aaron, it's Jake. Can you do me a favor? Ask James to reset my account password. Can you just send in a one-time link back to this WhatsApp? Thanks, mate.
Now, yes, that does sound a bit robotic, and if you know me well, you know that's not me. But let's say there's someone in your organization who you don't frequently communicate with. You've not met them before. You don't know what they sound like. That's a scary prospect, right? So I've seen this. I've seen organizations fall victim to this type of attack before, much more sophisticated variants of what I've just showed you. I worked with an organization where the CEO's voice was cloned. Obviously, the CEO is going to have a lot up online. You know, there might be town halls and things that are published to websites after. You know, might be events that they're a part of that get published to YouTube. But yeah, a CEO's voice was cloned from a public voice video, and in as per my example, what followed was a WhatsApp voice note to one employee who did actually fall victim to that to that scenario, unfortunately.
Hi Aaron.
So how do scams work? They all have something in common. The urgency factor, you know, you have to act now. You've only got minutes. This obviously rushes you past the point where you're able to think. Authority. So another thing these scams have in common is that they're usually portrayed to originate from someone with authority. So it could be your boss or the CEO or head of finance. You know, by them posing as someone that you know is an authoritative figurehead in the organization, you wouldn't normally question it, right? Another tactic is emotion, so fear, panic, excitement. You know, it switches off the rational part of your brain that enables you to think. And secrecy, this is very common. You know, a lot of these messages will start with "keep this between us," and what that does in turn is it stops you from checking with anyone else. Now, the key point here is if you feel rush or sworn to secrecy, that's a red flag. No one is ever going to punish you for checking, you know, checking twice if you have reason to believe that you're a victim. So now we're going to talk about the spillover, so personal to professional. So we spoke. Well, I touched on earlier on a point about how using a password on a shop could potentially, if you use that same password on your work account, that could potentially enable a threat actor to access your work information. Now, what I've done is I've taken a screenshot of a well-known website, and I've removed the model from that website, and I've put myself in it. And what follows on from, well, the point of that is on that website, I signed up to it using the password dolphin3 exclamation mark. What follows is a security report about that website. So 4 million account passwords stolen from asus.com. And you know, why is that a problem? Because where do those passwords that have been stolen from that shop end up on what's called a breach database? And that's what threat actors refer to enable them to carry out the sort of attacks we see today. So the breach database now, given that this website where I've used the password dolphin3 exclamation mark, given that that's been compromised and all of the information on it has been exposed, that's now in this breach database. And unfortunately, I just so happen to have used that same password for my email account at work. That's bad news for me now, because that has enabled the threat actor to get through and access my information. Also, that scenario is you know, it sort of leads on from the reuse password point that I mentioned earlier, but a public clip. So having too much exposed to the internet, whether it be video, social media, if you're on TikTok and do that sort of stuff, you need to be aware that that might be cloned. It's sort of inevitable. It's going to happen at some point. You need to be aware of the risks. An open profile, your open Facebook profile, if you've got your settings set to public, that could also be used to target you and your team. Now, none of these are work mistakes. They're all personal habits that become work exposures. And it's important to note that the attacker doesn't see a line between your private and professional life. You're always going to be the easier way in. So your social media footprint is an attack surface. So each post of yours online in itself is harmless, right? But let's think about how it all comes together. So I've put together some examples here. This fictitious scenario is involving someone called Sarah Smith, who is a junior underwriter at Contoso Underwriting. And now in the screenshot that we see in the top right, we could see that she's got her LinkedIn profile public, which is normal. No denying that. We can also see from looking at her profile that she's connected with someone called John Michael, who is the head of IT and works at the same organization as Sarah. In the third screenshot just beneath, we see a public Facebook post from Sarah who says, "The best mum in the world, Jennifer Smith," with a picture of that person's mum. And then in the last screenshot here, we've got another Facebook post that says, "Wow, Edmonton Green Shopping Centre is busy today. It's a good thing I live so close. I'll come back tomorrow." Now, think about those 4 screenshots now, what information that has equipped the threat actor with. And then look to see how that translates on the left there into an email that is then sent to Sarah at work. So, "Hi Sarah, John Michael in your IT department has asked me to reach out to you. We've noticed a sign in from your Microsoft 365 account from a new device outside of Edmonton, North London. If this was you, no action is needed." That's quite scary. You probably, Sarah will be thinking, "Oh, how does this person know that?" Or they might not be thinking that at all. They might think, "Oh, this looks normal." If you don't recognize this activity on your Contoso underwriting account, please review your recent sign-ins to keep your account secure. And the review activity. Now that's how these attacks spring into play. So you can see there how personal exposure translates into business risk. So yeah, one bit of advice here is Google yourself and look to remove old posts. So I grew up with technology. I was in that sort of I grew up in that late 90s, early 2000s time when obviously the internet was booming. And there was a lot and I used a lot of the different social media, like your Bebo, your MySpace, all of that sort of thing. So those profiles might still be available, and you don't know what you posted 20 or so years ago. So it's worth reviewing that. Just Google yourself. So what do we post without thinking? Well, there's a few examples here. So in the example that I've got on the right here, we're looking at Sarah as a case study. Sarah's got a public Snapchat account. So the Snapchat account is set so the visibility is public. Anyone can view Sarah's story. Sarah loves working from home, so much so she's put up a story here on Snapchat that says, it was captioned, "Love working from home." But what's in the background there is a bit of a problem, right? And that could equip a threat actor with some very useful information. So what we have in the background there is a document that Sarah is currently working on at work at Contoso Underwriting. It has some customer names and some sensitive information about an insurance policy. We all just have to be very mindful about what we post online and the privacy settings on the apps that we use. Another example, going on holiday, we're super excited, and we put up an Instagram story or a Facebook post of us, with our ticket. Um, but the problem is that ticket doesn't just include where it is that you're going to and proves that you're going away on holiday. It also includes some sensitive information, that would suggest where it is you're going, and the plane that you're on, and booking reference numbers that could equip someone with the ability to log in and change your flight experience, all sorts. Um, there's a lot which we post online without thinking. We're all guilty of it, I'm sure. Um, and another example might include a new job post, right? Announcing your new role at a company, and your team and your start date. This in itself, it's harmless, but what it tells a threat actor is that you're new on the job and that you might not have undergone any formal cyber awareness training as yet. So you are very much a target at that point. Also, posts, um, posts that you make at a coffee shop before work. You might check into that coffee shop. That allows a threat actor. If you do that on a daily basis, let's say you go to a different coffee shop every day, but the location is sort of similar across the board. That builds a bit of a location profile about you. Also, one example I like to use, as well, is those fun quizzes that we've all seen on social media, that ask you for your first pet's name, or the street that you grew up on, first car, or put your birth date in here to find your birth date and your mother's maiden name to find your superhero name, things like that. That is all very fun, but you don't know where that information is going. And that's the sort of information that a threat actor could use to get into your account, to recover a password. We also need to be mindful of who we're connecting with on LinkedIn. So do be aware before you accept random invitations from strangers, because they may not be real. And the posts that you make that are more private than others, you might have limited the visibility or the audience on some of them. They could still be seen. So, reputation in a trust-driven market. So we've covered the security risk, and this one's different. It's about your reputation. So, um, you know, let's say that all of this personal information, all of this information that's about you online, is weaponized, and it's used to access your work accounts. What's the risk? Well, if your work account is compromised, your account could be used to reach out to all of the clients and brokers that you deal with, and that's done in your name. So anyone that you're dealing with professionally will see that the email has come from you and will likely trust it straight away. Now, being that person in the organization as well who clicked on one of the links will follow you in a small professional-led market. And your posts shape how clients see you. So they look you up, and especially if you had a good call with them and someone's interested afterwards, they type you into Google and locate your LinkedIn profile. That might be their only intention, but they might come across other information that could be quite damaging to your reputation. So another point there on old content, expanding on what I mentioned earlier. If you do any public venting on social media, try and keep that private. It's trust is the job in this market. It's important to ensure that you're maintaining your online conduct and defending your professional reputation. So, spoken a lot about the risks of reusing passwords. How do we get around that? So what we do to get around that is we use something called a password manager. That's the suggested way of managing passwords. So what you don't want to do is use the same password across multiple accounts. So you want to avoid creating an account on a shop's website and then using that same password on your work accounts. Instead, use a password manager to make things easier. So with a password manager, you would obviously have a password to get into it. That's the only password you should ever have to remember. You can create a long, easy to remember password for that password manager, and anything that you store in that password manager can then be completely random. You want to ensure that for every account that you set up, whether it be for personal or work purposes, that each one has a different unique password set. So if one of the systems that you use or one of the services you use gets compromised, that password that's compromised from that system is not then used in a subsequent breach. There are many free options out there for password managers. You can type them in online. LastPass offer a solution. There's solutions such as Bitwarden, 1Password. Also, if you have a password manager at work already, usually depending on the type of agreement your work have with the business that supply the solution, you may be eligible for free accounts that you can use outside of work as well, that obviously your work have no visibility of. So just looking at some password examples here. So we've got in the top right corner here a password, love penguins !2. Now now allegedly that would take about 9 hours to crack, right? That's very low in complexity. So we've all been encouraged in the past to use more complex passwords, right? So here's an example of one of those. You think that's enough to keep you safe, and unfortunately it isn't, because that password still takes 12 days to crack. So the answer now is to use phrases in your passwords and sort of separate them with hyphens. So here's an example of a good password at the bottom right. Lovely day in Athens. Separated with hyphens. That's easy to remember. That might be the type of password that I decide to use to get into my password manager, because I'm not going to forget that. So advice on passwords have changed, and that's the suggested approach to use sort of phrases in your passwords. Now, beyond passwords, because to be honest, in this day and age, passwords themselves aren't the holy grail. That they're not gonna, no matter how complex you make them, there's always going to be some underlying security risks still that exists. So that's why we use something more than a password for our accounts. We use what's called multi-factor authentication, which I'm sure you'll all be very familiar with, because it's something that your banks will enforce, or the organizations that you work for, they'll enforce that control already. Now, MFA, it can be seen as a bit of a nuisance. Security doesn't equal convenience, but it's that safeguard that would prevent your account from becoming compromised. Now, when you're configuring multi-factor authentication on all of the sites that you use, consider that not all of the methods available for multi-factor authentication are secure. So you sometimes get the option to have one-time codes sent to your mobile phone via an SMS text message. Now, the problem with this is that in this day and age, it's actually possible for a threat actor to intercept those SMS codes. And it's not through it's not through them being able to sort of break the encryption in transit, it's by them actually phoning up your mobile provider, say for example EE or O2, impersonating you and effectively asking the mobile provider to issue a new SIM card. So through issuing a new SIM card, which can now, SIM cards now aren't always physical. They can be issued as a virtual SIM using like an eSIM. They can very quickly, if they get the impersonation part right, these threat actors can very quickly take over your number and intercept those codes. So where possible, try and avoid using SMS for your multi-factor authentication. Now, MFA is great. That also offers protection over a password, but again, it's not in itself. It's not going to stop all attacks. There are actually campaigns now run by threat actors that are capable of bypassing multi-factor authentication. So you'll want to know the warning signs of those. And I've included on screen a QR code which you can scan with your phone to a video that will give you some more information on how these types of attacks work. So I'll just leave the screen here just for a couple more seconds so that those that are interested can take a picture. We will share these slides at the end of the call, so if you miss it, then it's not a problem. We can you can come back to the slides and scan it again. I'm also more than happy for you all to reach out to me via LinkedIn, email, or however, and ask questions. So we've spoken about protecting your accounts and the identity side of it, but we also device hygiene is also a big part of this, right? Because you'll know that nowadays, if you lose your phone, you're losing a lot more than a phone. Back in the day when we all had very basic Nokia phones that could only ever text and call, didn't have any apps on it. You losing a phone was that was a materialistic loss. But nowadays, you lose your phone, you lose a lot more than that. Right, you're losing, you're potentially allowing someone with access to your phone the ability to go through your social media, send emails at work, access photos, family photos, all sorts. So bit of advice here is to lock everything. Use a PIN on your phone and you set an auto lock if possible on your laptop. So if you step away, say you're using your laptop in a coffee shop somewhere and you step away to use the loo, then if you forget to lock your device, you can rely on controls that will do that for you. Also, updates. Updates are a bit of a pain, let's be honest. Whenever there's updates, we postpone them, especially if we're working on something. But we have to reframe that. We have to realize that updates are actually very important for us to install on our devices, because threat actors exploit any vulnerabilities that they can. And thanks to the likes of AI now, you might have heard about the new Mythos model that is that I think has actually been backtracked at the moment. It's not available to use. AI models are allowing threat actors to uncover vulnerabilities in software, including the software that's installed to your phone, and through discovery of those vulnerabilities, they can exploit them. So update. Turn on auto updates if you can on all of your devices. Can be a bit of a pain, but as I sort of alluded to earlier, that security doesn't equal convenience. Lost or stolen phones. Those that live in London will unfortunately know the harsh reality of the fact that there are people on bikes that are snatching phones out of people's hands when they walk down the street. I've seen it happen before several times. It's very sad, but that's the world we live in. Know how to find and lock and wipe your phone. right? So if you've got an Android device, you turn on the Find My functionality. If you've got an iPhone, you can turn on the iCloud's Find My iPhone feature. Just so if your phone does get stolen, irrespective of how complicated your PIN code is, you can rest assured in knowing that you're able to lock the phone. Another point to note is just on app permissions. So, you know, I think I looked the other day on my phone and I had something like 200 apps, and I wondered how I got there. But it's phones have so much storage these days. You can install what you want to them, and you just forget about what you've installed. But be mindful of what you're installing. You know, if you've installed a game that you play on the tube into work, before you open the game, it might ask you to consent to some permissions. You've got to think to yourself, why does that game want you to consent to allowing them access to your contacts, microphone, and location? Something to be aware of. And avoid logging into anything work-related on your personal device, or vice versa. And I'll give you a bit of a story here. I worked with an organization many years ago where an employee had signed into the Google Chrome browser on their work machine with a personal Google account that was also signed into their Google Chrome at home. They'd actually accessed some rather interesting adult content on their home computer, which unfortunately for them also, that history of them accessing that and sort of it propagated through to their work device, because their work device is synchronized with the same account that they use signed into Chrome at home. So try and keep work-related things separate from your personal device, vice versa, just to ensure that it never happens to you. Now, AI is the buzzword of today, as we all know. Something to really just to sort of connect the slides up there. One habit that leaks your data, even when your device is perfectly secure, or your identity is secure, is how you use AI, right? It's a game changer, right? It's allowing us to do things at a much faster pace than we ever did before. We can get so much more work done thanks to AI. But I mentioned earlier on in the presentation about shadow AI, and I'm going to go into now about what this means. So shadow AI effectively means using tools that your firm hasn't approved for use. It's you signing up to say Claude or DeepSeek or something because you've heard it's a great tool and it's going to make your life easier. The problem with this is that account that you might have created for Claude or DeepSeek or whatever else, that's not governed by your organization. So your organization doesn't know that you're actually using that tool, and they have no oversight over what you're pasting into that tool. And none of us really know at this time if what we're pasting into AI is going to come back to bite us in the future. That's why it's very important to use an AI tool that is mandated by the organization that you work for. If in any doubt over if you have any doubts around the AI tool that you're using, raise it with your IT team. Say, I'm using AI, but I want to use it in a way that's safe and secure. Do the organization provide, enterprise AI accounts? Why that makes a difference is because if your organization provides you with an account on an AI system, it generally means that they have signed up to an enterprise agreement with, say, Claude or Copilot. And that enterprise agreement establishes some ground rules, right, for what the AI can do with the data that's pasted into it. So, and some of those ground rules might be that it doesn't learn from the grounds that the enterprise signed the agreement with say Claude might have been on Claude not retaining information or learning from the information that's given to it. So there's a reason why we have work AI accounts, and the reason is compliance. So just be very careful when pasting any work into public AI tools that aren't provided by your organization. If you must use a personal account for AI, or even if you're using AI at work, using an account that's been provided by your IT team, a good habit that I've got into over the years is before I paste in anything customer related, I first put it into a notepad document and I remove anything incriminating in there. So I will do a control find, control F on my keyboard to find the company name, and I'll replace it with a fictitious company name. So, rather than Intersys, the organization I work for, I will replace any references to Intersys with Contoso, for instance. I will remove any figures about financial figures or anything that might reveal who it is that I'm referring to in my prompt. That's a good habit to get into, because it just means if anything was to happen to that data in the future, at least you've sort of applied a bit of due diligence beforehand in trying to minimize what information is exposed. So another point on AI is AI, it does get things wrong, right? Even though we're seeing new models come out from the likes of Claude, like Opus and Sonnet, they're very good, but they still make mistakes. They invent facts, they invent figures, and even sources. Sometimes you'll ask AI to cite a source that it used in its reply, and it will give you a link to something that doesn't reference anything that it has mentioned at all. So you need to be mindful of that, especially in the insurance world, because if you're using it to write up in documents, policies and things, or review existing policies, it may well invent facts. And the wrong sort of detail might represent the case. Also, rather interestingly, I saw a post from someone on LinkedIn the other day. I can't recall who it was from. I'll have to dig it out and make it available to you all. But they mentioned how consumers are fabricating claims. So in the example that was given, I think there was some minor damage that was done to someone's car. And they raised a claim, but in the claim they attached a photo that was manipulated using AI tools, and that photo made the damage on the car look a lot worse than what it was. So something to be mindful of. Now, I put together a resource. It's a video. It's about, I think it's about 6 or 7 minutes long, and it outlines the sort of steps that you can take to ensure that you're safely interacting with AI tools. There's a QR code on screen, once again, just in the bottom right there, that you can scan on your phone. I'd recommend watching that video, and of course, if you have any questions, you're more than welcome to reach out to me. I'm very happy to help. So, we've spoken a lot about scams, what you can do to protect yourself. Let's talk about the verification habit. So, if you feel that you are subject to any of these scams, do verify, right? Before you act on any first message that you receive or a call, if it's a call, for example, that you've received and you think it might be a cloned voice, confirm via a known number. Disconnect the call and phone back on the person's number that you have saved to your contacts list. Also, if you're in doubt, check with someone. Know the signs as well. Know the signs and when to verify. So, some of the telltale signs that I went through earlier, urgency, secrecy, all of that sort of thing. And if you feel that something slipped through, tell someone immediately, because reporting fast is the fix. The worst thing you could possibly do if you fall victim to a scam, or disclose your account details is sort of try and throw it under the carpet, right? That's the last thing you want to do, because that will cause a lot of damage down the line. So be upfront about your mistakes. We all make them, and in the world that we live in, there's a lot of new sophisticated technology that will inevitably catch us out at some point. So it's no problem. We all fall victim to it. It's just reporting fast is very important. So 6 things to do today. So one of the first things, and it's not going to make much sense when presented on the slide, is check have I been pwned right now. Now what is that? You're probably wondering. Have I been pwned is something that you can type into Google. There's a website that you'll go onto and you can enter your email address and it will tell you where your email address has been seen in data breaches and what those data breaches relate to. So if for example, I could go to this website now and type in my email address and it might say that that my email has been found in, say, 17, 18 different data leaks. There's going to be sites that I signed up to years ago that are run by companies that have been breached. So, it might be that I'm able to identify some of those sites and think back and maybe think that, oh, hang on a minute, that website I signed up to that, and I might have used the same password there that I used for my work account. That's a good, a good bit of foresight to then go and change your work password. Set up a password manager and stop reusing passwords. If you can, as I say, there's lots of free options available. Turn on multi-factor authentication on your key accounts. And when we spoke about public exposure earlier on, check your privacy settings on WhatsApp, on Snapchat, on Instagram, wherever you use social media. There might be cases where you do actually want everyone, even anonymous people, to see what you post. Especially if it's work related and you're building your professional reputation. But think about some of the other apps that you use, and whether or not you need to expose things like stories and what you're up to publicly. If you use a free AI service, turn off model training so that AI can't learn from the data that you publish into it. That's a setting that's readily available for you to adjust in the account settings area in, say, ChatGPT, Claude, Copilot, everywhere else. And do a self-search, see what a stranger sees about you. So you might search yourself on Google and see that it's only LinkedIn that comes up. Or you might uncover some information from, say, 10 years ago that maybe you don't feel comfortable with being exposed online. So thank you very much for listening to me. Hopefully I haven't rambled on too much, and the pace in which I've presented the slides has been comfortable for everyone. I'll open the floor up to questions now, and I will answer those. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Jake. Really interesting, actually. We've had a couple of questions come through already, so going to get you to address the first one. Someone just asked, I think you mentioned it earlier, what is browser isolation when using AI on office systems? Just go into a bit more deeper on that, please.
Browser isolation while using AI in office systems. Browser isolation. I would assume that is that referencing like DLP controls, preventing exposure of sensitive information, like stopping it in its tracks before it gets pasted into AI. Maybe we'll touch on that afterwards. I'll reach out to you directly and explore that with you a bit more. I'd love to answer that question. I might not have understood that correctly.
Yes, it is similar to DLP controls. We just had Anchor come back very quickly. Also, mics and cameras are enabled if it's easier to utilize that Anchor at all. Jake, I don't know if that helps create an answer, or if it's something you need to take away with you.
Yeah, I'll take away and I'll run through. If you're looking for some solutions or anything that you can do around that, I'd be very happy to reach out and even have a chat with you in a separate call. So yeah, we'll do that. I see another question here around cyber from Jack, actually. Thanks, Jack. Is cyber awareness and information security training mandatory training that all companies should provide their employees? every organisation that I deal with, I suggest to them that they roll out managed cyber awareness and information security training, because it's very important. Not everyone is technically minded and knows of these risks. And that's something I recognise. I know the risk because I work in IT. But I'm aware that there's going to be people that I work with in other departments that aren't going to use computers as much as I do. So they would very much benefit from training. So I would say it should be mandatory in all organisations. And if anyone's interested here in any solutions that you can use to drive that forwards, I've got a whole catalogue of different platforms that I can recommend to you, and even provide you with assistance on how to roll them out.
Fantastic. If there's any follow-up to anything Jake's just mentioned there, please let us know. I've just, again, a reminder that you do have cameras and microphones enabled. I'm just going to check, actually, microphones are enabled now. Might just take a moment to come through. We've also got the Q&A section if anyone does want to ask a question anonymously. Whilst we see if any more questions come up, I'm also just going to share a quick link to our survey for any feedback and advice you have. And obviously, if you do want any introductions or connections to Jake to explore maybe cybersecurity in relation to yourself or your organisation, you can pop your interest in getting connected that way as well. But any more questions for Jake in our session? Or is everyone going to go frantically away and start Googling themselves and seeing about and looking into their digital footprint? I must admit, it's probably quite timely to do another check. I'm going to assume there's no further questions, Jake. If someone has to join off, so let's join another meeting shortly. So let's start wrapping up. I mean, I'm going to actually hand over to Jack, who's the Next Gen chair. Next Gen Committee Chair, just to wrap up our session today. But I'd also just like to say thank you to everyone on behalf of the MGAA for coming along, and to Jake and the Next Gen Committee for their time in their session. Over to you, Jack.
Thank you all.
Thanks, Manveen. And yes, thank you, Jake. Just to echo what Manveen just said there, I think that was a really interesting and insightful session, and given us some real key sort of tips to take away there, and just going a few checks that we can go and do just to make sure that we're our cyber hygiene is sound, and how that sort of interrelates with our professional world now is really interesting. So I think, we've got lots to take away. So thank you. And thank you to everyone for joining as well, taking some time out of your lunch. I appreciate coming along to support and listen to what Jake had to say. On that note, we've got a session at the conference next week. So hoping many of you will be there next week. If you are, our session is at 1:30 in the tech zone. So please do come along. We've got a really interesting session around personal brand, hosted by two of our committee members, Zoe and Julie, and got some really interesting guests as well. So keep an eye on LinkedIn this week, because we'll be announcing who they are. But yeah, look forward to seeing as many of you at the conference next Tuesday for our session. And also the committee will be hanging around after on the MGAA stand for anyone who's got any questions or wants to come and introduce themselves. We're all always excited to meet new entrants into the market, or anyone else that has got an interest in joining the committee, or anyone who's simply just got a couple of questions for us. We'll be happy to answer those. So look forward to seeing you all there. And once again, thanks, Jake, for hosting such a great session.
Thank you all. Much appreciated.